Nate, we're here. We're mock drafting. We're live. We're excited to see everybody in the group chat. Mouth off in the group chat if you're here chilling with us on an early Saturday morning. Nate, you brought the idea up the other night and you're like, Sleeper has these rookies in now. Let's live stream
do
about it. And you pulled me in like pulling teeth. But here we are, excited to hang out with everybody. All of our patrons are loading up the mock draft as we speak. If you want to get in on some of these mock drafts, head on over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. We've been mocking basically nonstop since these these rookies got imported into Sleeper, and all of them aren't even there yet. I'm still waiting on Taj Washington. I'm still waiting on Jalen Wright,
Cody Schrader
for the Shredder. Got to get
me.
him in there. Got to get him in there for you and Mike. I'm sure Mike's itching to draft him as well. But as always, we are going to be answering some questions as mock drafts fill. As we take a step back after each mock draft, maybe we'll take somewhat of an in-depth look at each mock draft as well and answer some questions that come up. We got some comments pouring in already. Love to see that. And with comments, questions, concerns, complaints, all of the things, we will be prioritizing super chats. That is one thing with this. We're going to have a lot of questions and we just can't get to all of them. So if you want to guarantee your question gets answered and you want to support the show, that's obviously a huge benefit to that too for us. And obviously we want to hang out with you guys and all that. We got a good question right off the rip. Some fun ones chiming in. Nate, I want to hear from you. All right. Who's your favorite sleeper in this draft? What do you got?
Favorite sleeper in this draft?
I mentioned mine already.
You already did?
Yeah, Taj Washington, my favorite sleeper, USC wide receiver, Yak God, as we like to call him. Malachi Corley wishes he could be Taj Washington with the deeper ADOT and the yards per reception much higher. Easily my favorite right now. I look around and he's projected to be a day 3 role player, and I get a little less excited. I get a little hurt with that, but overall, that's mine right now. Who do you got? Who's your favorite sleeper right now that maybe not enough people are talking about?
Man, if I had to bring up one sleeper that I'm starting to get into is Luke McCaffrey.
Okay.
Which is Christian McCaffrey's brother, Ed McCaffrey's son. So we got the bloodlines there. We know the NFL loves the bloodlines. Luke McCaffrey's definitely a day 3 pick, but with those bloodlines, maybe he's a day 2 pick. People, they get excited about that. He's got the talent. He looked really, really good the last 2 years for Rice, and he was playing running back before that. Now he's a wide receiver. There's just something there that excites me. So he's one of my favorite sleepers. Someone that is actually my favorite sleeper, but we might barely even talk about on the show, is George Holani, running back out of Boise State. He's someone I've been on for like 5 years now.
A minute. Yeah.
I've loved him, loved what he does as a running back. He's got a full skill set. He's dealt with some injuries in college, and I think it slowed him down a little bit. He is going to the Hula Bowl.
Ooh.
So actually, I think the Hula Bowl already happened, but he went to the Hula Bowl. So George Holani, we'll see if he pops up anytime.
Yeah, no, we got. I love that you've been on here for a minute, so we always like to see that. A lot of good morning, everybody's.
It is a good morning. I tried to get Bob to get here even earlier, but he said no.
Okay, yeah, that is true. I did. Well, it's early for me. I'm Central Time. You're, on the East Coast, the least coast, as they say over here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then my good boy Bubba, my dog, saying good morning, boys, and my wife too, saying good morning, Alanis, and Bubba, watching out in the living room as we speak. But we are currently waiting for this mock draft to fill. We only got 2 spots left, or 3 spots left. If I can do math and learn how to count, that would be great. Right now, all of our patrons are in this draft. With all of these drafts, we drop the link in our patron Discord community, and it's basically first come, first served at that point. Might be dropping it in the YouTube comments today. We'll see how it goes and what happens. I don't want to wait too long to get started with mock drafting itself, but I've got plenty of patrons here I see already jumping in the chat. So for sure, Sean's out there showing his support, has a beautiful Rewind mug chilling, I guess. Nate, do you have your Rewind mug? You do. Look at that. If you want a Rewind mug of your own, head to spreadshop.com/Dynasty Rewind. And then we got a YouTube member, Tom Sebeski, chilling in as well. I'm sure I butchered that last name. I apologize, Tom. He's been supporting us for a while. Love Tom. He's a great guy to have in the comments. He supported the brand with roster reviews and other things of that nature too. So we have a lot of love in the chat today already popping off. We have 2 spots to fill. Can we fill them with patrons? I don't know. We'll see if we can get there. And then let's see if we have any more Drop it in here. Ryan, you're in the comments too. I see this Ryan in the comments too a ton. Huge supporter there. So I might be going ahead and dropping this in the comments. Like I said, I don't want to wait too long. And then you guys get a taste of seeing what it's like hanging out in a Discord community and so on. So I'm going to post this one in there and pop this.
All right.
The early comers. I hope that works. I don't know. I've never done that before. Drop a link in there like that. So it might work. It might not. If it doesn't, I
see if they start popping in.
Yeah. See if it happens.
There we go. Look at that.
Yeah, that's I have to assume Ryan got in because I see that abbreviated username. Ryan. Welcome, Ryan. Enjoy the time. And we got Brad from McKinney chiming in as well, and plenty of others. We're gonna get to this mock draft. But before we do that, I obviously have to share the draft board. So we're going to do that. We're going to get into the proper screening format, Bob, rookie hour over here. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit start on this draft. I hope everybody's ready and rock and roll. I hope everybody's notifications are off or whatever sounds are off on this draft so we don't get
mine is. Don't worry.
Blasted. So we're at the 101. This is a super flex draft for anybody asking. As you can see, super flex rewind patrons mock 101. This or 1.0. First draft we're doing with patrons as a super flex on the channel with the channel as a brand. I guess you could say we've popped some in there for funsies, but we got our buddy blew in on the 101. You get it. Marvin Harrison 101. I got some thoughts on that. We're going to get to that in another mock, though, because I picked the 101 for specific reasons. So we see Marvin Harrison come off at the 101, Caleb Williams at the 102. We got our buddy Caleb, recently promoted from Discord duties, was a community supporter for a couple years, ended up making a Discord moderator. That's how popping the Discord is. We need moderators now, which is pretty cool, I guess. I don't want to, self-hub too much, I guess. But I love this spot and I hate it because there's two players I really like on the board here. Yeah. And I'm going to go with my heart at this point. I got two players I like. I can't fault any pick here too much. I almost picked the wrong player. I'm going to go ahead and take Malik Neighbors off the board. I have Malik Neighbors very close to Marvin Harrison Jr. at this point. And I get all of the prospecting that's going on with Marvin Harrison. He's been good for a long time in college. And there's obviously the bloodline there that you talked about with Luke McCaffrey. Obviously that exists. And I don't love to get into that analysis too much because it's, Malik Neighbors' dad could be just as athletic and impressive as Marvin Harrison, and he's just not an NFL player. That's just something to think about. But either way, just love the talent, love the players. They're both good players. I'm not saying, Marvin Harrison's terrible or anything like that. Like, stop worshiping the guy. But love getting him here. Malik Neighbors, that is, at the 104. And passing up on the quarterback, that was tough for me. Leaving Jaden Daniels on the board. The quarterback who I like, I'm probably going to have him over Drake May by the end of scouting. I need to get more into Drake May because he's a player I just need to dive more into because I have my initial feelings from previous scouting years. And, I really want to get this last year under my belt that much more. But I definitely have some concerns and just general issues, I guess. But we do see Jaden Daniels come off the board at the 105. And we're waiting at the 106. Nate, you decided to challenge yourself.
You did.
At the back of the first round here, and the back of every round, actually, since it's a linear draft. We see Brock Bowers come off at the 106, and I'm assuming we'll see Rome Odunze come off at the 107. I don't want to tip my hand or tip anybody's hand on who they should or shouldn't be drafting. But definitely, Rome Odunze. I don't want to pressure anybody into drafting anybody. Draft who you want, draft who you like.
I was like, you better draft Troy Franklin right now.
Right. Put some respect on the name. But I do think in general, this is the top 7 that we talked about that we have so far. And I think this is, the order might get jumbled up, but I think the talent wise, this is the front 7 we see. And we see I don't know if he did this on purpose. I don't know if K-Wade did this on purpose, but maybe he really likes the guy. Who knows? That's fine. I'm not, we got issues with Keon Coleman over here, though. You and I do, Nate, and Mike as well. See a lot of upside with Keon Coleman, but we do see a lot of blemishes in his game that, and when you stack him up, beautiful graphic. I wish I remembered I want to say it was like Fantasy Jeans was the Twitter posted a beautiful graphic of all of the metrics of Quentin Johnson analytically compared to Keon Coleman. And it was like almost a mirror image. It was crazy to see. But besides all that, in general, issues with route running, issues with some receiving work and things like that. But we do see some favorites come off the board following. Brian Thomas, a favorite of yours. Troy Franklin, a favorite of mine as well. And we both are. I'm still trying to sort out my feelings for Brian Thomas. You went Bo Nix
I
at
did.
111, though, a guy we love at the 111 or in general in this draft. Tell us about Bo Nix.
Yeah,
Bo
Bo
wrap
Nix,
up this first round.
one of my favorite quarterbacks in this draft. And he was a guy that I was, projecting as a first rounder last year. I said on this show that, he was my dark horse first round quarterback for 2024 draft class. You could see that Oregon offense about to take off. You knew that Bo Nix and the traits that he showed, just athletically, the arm that he has, there was a lot of talent there. And then this year we saw him really process the field. Some people are going to point to the offense and say that, it was a really safe offense. There's a lot of throws, close to the line of scrimmage. You didn't test the downfield a lot, but Bo Nix, like Bob, we've talked about before, we love a good processor at the quarterback position, and he's got all the arm talent. He's got the mobility. Sounds like he's going to be a first round quarterback. That's what we're hearing. We don't know for certain. We know the first three guys are definitely first round quarterbacks, all like top 5 picks. And then it kind of gets into this weird, hey, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr., where are they going to go? Are they all first rounders? I'm not sure yet, but I do believe that Bo Nix is one. I think teams are going to really like him. So picking him up here at the end of the first, if he's a first round quarterback in the NFL draft, then you're getting a great value here.
Yeah, I think if we do see the more quarterbacks we see in the first round, that could extend that top 7 tier into that to make like that 8 that much better. Like we kind of saw with Anthony Richardson last year, come on kind of late or in the middle of the draft process to make the top 5 look like more like top 6. But we do have a super chat here I want to get to. Thank you very much, Thomas, for supporting the brand, the channel, and us doing this video, doing this live. Dynasty Superflex trade, trading Alexander Madison plus a 212 for Dontavian Wicks. I am probably okay with this deal. I don't love moving the 212 because I know there's good talent. There's going to be guys that are available there that have better draft capital than Dontavian Wicks, but if we can make that a third instead, I don't know, or maybe get a third back with Wicks, even if it's in 25. I
He's
think
got Jordan Love, so he wants to stack.
Oh, well, in that case, that makes everything better. But I don't hate this deal as is. I just, Wicks showed a lot down the stretch, and it was nice to see. But with how crowded that wide receiver room is, it could go any way. He could be buried just as easily next year if he becomes inconsistent or whatever the case is. So I do have some reservations if with that 212, if we could get a third back to just ensure ourselves that much more, I'd feel better about the deal. Nate, your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel pretty similar. Like, I think overall I'm good with this deal because what we saw from Wicks was just really impressive at the end of the season. He really came on. And, we've kind of talked about it before. Maybe the Packers trade Christian Watson, maybe they don't. But like you said, the reservations are there. That is a very crowded wide receiver room. And Jordan Love showed some really, really impressive efficiency this year. I think there's going to be bound to be some regression there with the efficiency. So there's just a lot of mouths to feed in this room. But Dontavian Wicks, we knew he was a really good route runner coming out of college. We just wondered about the hands, and that seems to be fixed at this point. So I'm cool with making this deal. I'm not really worried about Alexander Madison's value in this trade. It feels more like the 212 for Wicks.
Yeah, Madison for me is barely a factor.
Literally a throw-in piece.
Yeah, so I almost timed out. I think that was Thomas's strategy here to get me to time out on the clock. But appreciate the support again, Thomas. We got another one from Go. Appreciate you and the super chat as well, bunch. Does Marvin Harrison going to Chicago possibly scare you playing behind DJ Moore? See, here's the thing, and it's in front of us now, but this part here, playing behind DJ Moore, I don't know that lasts very long, personally.
I think very, very long.
I would be concerned if he goes there and Justin Fields. Yeah, a little bit. Just hey guys, anybody ever Home Improvement? Anybody watch that? Anybody shout out if anybody's watched Home Improvement? Tim Allen fans out there, but
it's gonna look like this.
I'm curious if it does stay Fields, and I don't know that they do that. I tend to lean that they draft Caleb and call it a day, and move Fields for other draft capital. But I would be concerned. But it is one of those things right now. I'm not going to let it kind of devalue a prospect because there's just so much to get into with landing spots and things of that sort that there's a lot to play out in the meantime. So it's tough to say. I would be somewhat concerned though. And I hope that answers the question. I would be concerned if it was Fields. Nate, your thoughts?
I I don't know how concerned I'd be if it was Fields, maybe slightly more than Williams, just because you don't have the as long term of a commitment and just like knowing the quarterback situation. But overall, I don't think the passing volume is as terrible. This is something we talked about a lot in the offseason, actually. You, me, and Brandon about the passing volume in Chicago and if it would actually go up. Because remember, last year it was like 40% or something like that. It was crazy low.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of went back and forth. I think you and Brandon were pretty staunch that it wasn't going to go up that much. I thought it was going to go up. I think they were going to make the change. It ended up actually being the second highest change for passing volume. Brandon just dropped that in the Discord earlier this week, the different plays and breakdown of plays from all the teams this year and how it compared to 2022. So the Bears actually went up about 13% in passing volume, getting closer to 50%. So they're actually not nearly as low among the league as they were before. Still a lower passing volume, but
Jesus.
But I wouldn't be that worried about it.
Yeah, just to wrap this up, I would be more concerned with Cole Kmet in that offense than I would be Marvin Harrison or DJ Moore.
He'd be the third.
Because we talk about it, we want a top 2 option at tight end. So that's a huge thing. So Kyle, unnecessary. Thank you so much. Appreciate that so much. Appreciate all of that. Yeah, no kidding. That was why I said Jesus in the middle of a sentence. Just taking a moment there. Appreciate the heck out of you. Too much, far too kind. So back to the draft board. Now we had Michael Penix go off the board at the 112, which is interesting. I'm not a big Penix guy. I am concerned on his draft capital. And I think the NFL is going to be too, especially with all the injuries. We see Xavier Worthy at the 2-1, which I think is like the peak of where I really like having him. But I'm coming around to the player I think we both are. We're both kind of back in on the Xavier Worthy concept.
Yeah.
Then JJ McCarthy at the 2-2. Jonathan Brooks go at the 2-3. Incredible value to see our first running back, the best running back in the class, come off the board. I was stressed and freaking out and panicking because I was taking too dang long on the clock and didn't realize I was up. So I drafted Jatavion Sanders. It was the first person I saw. I wish I would have drafted Bucky Irving, but I will say, and I know there's going to be, as we get into future drafts where Jatavion Sanders goes early in the second round, you have to look at the economy of this draft class at tight end. You have an elite option in Brock Bowers. You have a great option in Jatavion Sanders, in my opinion. And then it's a lot of question marks. We have guys we like. We love Ben Sinnott. We love Cade Stover a good bit. Dolan Holker out of Kansas or Colorado State, excuse me. Good options, some upside there and things like that. But the thing is, when there's not a lot of tight ends, they're going to get pushed up the board. And people like drafting tight ends early anyway, because we do. I don't have good reasoning why, but we do. And we see one of your favorites, Adonai Mitchell, go off at the 2-5, then Bucky Irving, who I wish I would have drafted at 2-4, but that's okay. It is what it is. I like seeing some respect on it. We see Blake Corum at 2-7, Devontae Walker at 2-8, which I like that value a lot too, because I do have some concerns, but I do believe in the athletic ability and the overall raw ability. We see Xavier Leggett, excuse me.
Leg it out.
Leg it out. And I come off at the 2-9. Then at 2-10, we have Trey Benson. I'm sure you were sniped on that one. And then you picked up Ladd McConkey, which we've seen in every single round of mock drafts at this point. We've seen him in the late first, the late second, and I think the mid third with one of our most recent mock drafts on the channel as well. So he's all over the board. Tell us about Ladd McConkey. The McConkey Tonk is here. It started. Get it going.
Man, we're getting excited about Ladd McConkey over here. He's showing up on all the live streams as well. He's everywhere. He's going to the Senior Bowl, and he's a player that he's actually an underclassman, and he's going to the Senior Bowl. He's one of the few underclassmen actually going to the Senior Bowl. I was actually listening to a podcast last night where Jim Nagy was talking about how he was really disappointed actually in how many underclassmen turned down the Senior Bowl this year. Because remember, this is the first year that underclassmen were allowed to go to the All-Star Bowls. And we didn't actually get a lot that ended up going to the All-Star Bowl. So we'll see if that changes at all. But Ladd McConkey, he was like, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to prove that I'm healthy, because he had that back injury throughout the season that we've seen kind of limit him and take him out of the game for Georgia. But when he was on the field, he was one of the most productive wide receivers in all of America this year. Yards per route run over 3, which is always impressive. And when he was in, Brock Bowers, obviously. Oh,
Caleb's getting fired.
Look at that.
Caleb's fired. I'm done. This is not fair.
that is not. That's
Oh
not
man. Well,
kosher.
that's okay. I get to draft another favorite of mine that we'll get to at some point. But before I forget that I'm on the clock or don't
Yeah.
realize it, the snipe hurts. But go ahead, continue. I
Yeah,
apologize.
basically what I was going to finish up with is Lad McConkey. You know, as much as Brock Bowers was that offense for Georgia, Lad McConkey was the right next to Brock Bowers. He was the next guy up, and Georgia loved to lean on him, especially when Brock Bowers was out. So I'm a big fan of Lad McConkey. I think he's a total value at the end of the second round right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, when you look at just the athleticism, there's obviously going to be question marks with the health that you mentioned. But from the little bit I've seen so far, it's an interesting little pickup there. And depending on where he goes is obviously going to be the question because,
Yeah,
you know, where does he get drafted in the NFL draft? How do the medicals come back from the combine?
the medical is going to be a big thing.
Yeah, the medicals are going to check out, and where he gets drafted in the NFL draft is probably going to tell you where those medicals lined up.
Yep.
So that's something to keep thinking about and keep monitoring as we move along. We got Jalen Polk coming off at 212, who I really like. There was a question, and maybe you have an answer. I haven't gotten to look at this other guy yet, so I'm a little biased. Obviously, the question was Jalen McMillan or Jalen. What's his?
Jalen? Was it Jalen? I think
It's Jalen Polk. And then the
and
first name
Jalen.
Okay, it's Jalen and Jalen.
They're just
Okay,
spelled differently though.
that was screwing me up. My bad. It's too early. But I couldn't agree more with this sentiment either, Richard Cheese. But
It's true.
Chair
We do need a chair upgrade. My last chair died, and this is
just cut off those knobs, and then there you go. Just
don't worry about it, guys.
Pop it up like
We're
that.
all good here.
Oh man, too funny. All right, but between those two, like I said, I haven't watched McMillan enough yet to have too much of a say, but I do love Polk.
Polk is really impressive. Yeah.
So
I think Polk here.
Yeah, I do as well, and that's a little biased because I haven't really dove into the other at all yet. But then we have our buddy Tom chiming in, YouTube member as well. This is for you both. If you had to pick a potential bust, who would it be regardless of locations or draft capital? Nate, I got one screaming in my head right now.
Yeah,
I don't know about
let's
you.
Hear no, let's hear your obvious one.
Mine is Keon Coleman.
Yeah, that's the easy one to pick, I think. Just because his play style, we've seen it recently, and it's been very hit or miss. Just with that play style where we have question marks about separation, and you lean on contested catch ability and like contested catch highlights to really make your name, and that just, you know, if you can continue that into the NFL, that's one thing. But when you're looking at a 33% contested catch rate in college, you know, it's maybe not your thing you need to lean on when you get to the NFL.
Yeah. And I think too with him, like I can acknowledge that he has upside, plenty of upside. And what might make him not a bust is if he slides down the draft board where you can draft him in the mid to late second, which is where I think he should be. With all of the talent in this draft that we can say is like locked in talent, why are we taking shots on guys that have upside? Don't get me wrong. Keon Coleman has a boatload of upside, great athlete, good after the catch, all of the things. But when you lose those raw, not even raw, but those refined tools, that's when we have questions. That's, you know, the consistency there. And again, when people are so high on Keon Coleman, I feel like they feel like he had a better year than he did. And we talked about that as well. And it, you know, not a super impressive season, had some great games. Don't get me wrong, but you know, that'd probably be my screaming one. I don't think there's any others right now that are
I could probably name a couple because I think like Xavier Legette is one you got to take into account because of the 5th year breakout. You know, and see, like we're bringing these things up. These are players that we have these feelings about just because of statistics and things like that. It's not just like, oh, I got this bust vibe from this player. No, Keon Coleman's contested catch rate's not as good as everyone makes him out to be. Xavier Legette has that 5th year breakout. That does bring up question marks.
Yeah.
Know, we're looking at these players that have question marks, and that's the ones that we're going to, bring up because, like I've said before, Bob, sometimes it's better to know who not to draft than it is to draft. Because if you can just knock like X out a couple players, sometimes that's all you really need to do because you'll just hit. If you pick between 3 or 4 players.
And that is so true, and that's something that I realized that over time, like I was doing, but I wasn't like putting it into that thought process of like, man, if I just nail down who not to draft and just avoid landmines, my drafts always look pretty good. And, I've drafted my fair share of guys that don't pan out, but I really avoid that in the first round. And if that's going to be where I have to draft Keon Coleman, That's my issue.
Yep.
If I can get him in the second, like I can
I love
probably
it.
get Leggett at this point, I'm not opposed, and hopefully Leggett's a little later. But those are two really good picks off the top of the rip there. But that's it for this mock. Let's talk about
Frank
the
Gore Jr.
finishing.
being the last pick.
Love it. Just get some respect in there. More. Is this going to be the draft where, because everybody's against like Nepo culture right now? Is this going to be the draft where everybody's like, oh, it's just a bunch of Nepo babies? I've been seeing that so much.
We got to
it's
get Kyle's
absurd.
question up here, though.
Yes, we do. You're right. I apologize. Good call. Kyle, appreciate you again chiming in here. In a rebuild, I have the 101, 104. Let's go into this screen for a minute. In a rebuild, I have the 101, 104, 109. Team is lacking starters. Is this year to trade back from 109 to get multiple seconds? Nate, you brought up a really good trade. I believe it was in our what we trade every pick for in the first round this year. And you brought up the concept of moving the 109 to the early-ish second. And then you could possibly pull for a first round pick next year with the value of the 109. I think you can do that still.
Like a late 25 first.
Yeah. Or what we assume to be a late 25 first. Don't
if you target everything as a late 20, like a late whatever first, you can only be happy, because there's a wonderful way of things working out where late first become mid first or early first. And if you just value it a late first, then you will not be disappointed.
Yeah, no, 100%. And another concept, I agree with that, because I think at the 108, 109, you're kicking off a new tier anyway. We talk about the concept of moving, if you're at the top of a tier, move to the back of the tier, and just pick up whatever value you can. I think when we get into 108, 109, we're in that range of like anything can happen. There's a lot of players that's kind of just pick your poison at that point. You can slide back and go, slide back, get some value. There we go, words.
Yeah.
Another consideration I would have, and I was doing this in a roster review yesterday when I was prepping one of those. If you're interested in a roster review, taking an in-depth look at rosters, check out payhub.com/Dynasty Rewind. Link in the YouTube description as well. But one thing is the concept of syncing that first round pick throughout the first round and into the early second, and you manipulate the tiers as you move down the board. You go from the 101 to like the 104 or 105. Well, you have the 104, you wouldn't trade with yourself. Kind of counterproductive. So move from 101 to 105, move from 105 to 108, move from 108 to 201, then move that, either draft at that 201, or you get to trade that 201 for a future first next year. Because that's something we like to play with too, is with any 01 in a round, you trade that 01 then for the next year's upgraded pick round. Yeah. So if 201 for a first, 301 for a second, 401, you might have to kick out 2 years to get that deal done, just because there's less incentive later in drafts. But people still want to get their guy, and hey, if they can kick a pick out 2 years from now, who cares? I'd do that for Jacob Cowing, who might be at the end of third rounds. But yeah, so those are just a couple options, something to think about. And you get to pick up a good chunk of assets as you move down the board, because jumping those tiers, and why you make quote unquote significant moves down the board, you get a lot more kickback when you make those moves. And like moving 101 to 105, you can probably get a second this year or next, and a first next year. I think personally, I think that's pretty shakes out pretty fair value. And then you just keep doing that. I don't know if you get a first after that, but you can probably get multiple seconds. And then that last one, like I said, you get to the 201, kick that out for a first next year, or draft an eventual possible starter. I think those are two really good avenues you can work with. So you can work off the 109. And the thing I love about when you sync a pick too, just to wrap up this point, and I'm really glad we got to touch on this for Kyle too, the reason I like syncing a pick so much in this draft is because you already have other picks to work around. You're not just avoiding all of the top tier talent. You have the 104, which is in a super flex, is a top tier pick. 109, you get into that second grouping, or technically third grouping, I guess you could say, of talent, but you still get to add talent to your roster. You're not just kicking everything down the road. So I love this concept, and just the idea of syncing picks. And this is just one way to play with values and go from there. And we have another super chat coming in here from another Patreon, Logan Sparks. I just did your roster review. Appreciate the heck out of you as well. Hey guys, in one league, I took over an orphan. Only starters I have are Russ and Saquon. I have the 101, 102, 106, 108, and 110. Any ideas for me? That sunk pick
Hmm.
strategy sounds pretty
Yeah,
darn good to me right now.
that's pretty good.
That would be definitely one thing I would look to do again you could do it with the 101 or the 102. Assuming this is super flex, you could take Caleb 101 and start sinking that 102, or vice versa. If you'd rather just get the quarterback, you could do that as well. So
Yeah. I think the first thing you got to do, if you really only have Russ and Saquon as starters, obviously you're going to be moving off those guys in this rebuild. They're not going to fit your timeline. We always talk about timeline here at the Rewind. And when you're building your team, your timeline for contention is something that you need to build around. So, Russell Wilson, Saquon Barkley, maybe not sure if now is really you're going to get great value for them, but this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to sell them this offseason or maybe beginning of this season to diversify, get multiple assets for these guys. Maybe you can move these guys for 25 firsts. During the offseason, while 25 firsts are still not that valuable. Think about how valuable first round picks are now in 2024. You can always get ahead of the curve. If you just are willing to wait a year, you can get really good discounts on first round picks. So, you definitely need to start selling off some pieces here. Go all into the rebuild. That's something we also, always talk about. If you're going to dip your toes in the rebuild, you need to dive in, because otherwise you're really just hurting yourself, especially in leagues where, your draft order is based upon your standings. But if it's based on, max points for, then you need to offload production. And so that's something we really need to do here. Offload production, invest in draft capital. We got a lot of first round picks here. This is a really good base to start our rebuild, but we need to make sure we get 2025 draft capital as well. And we can either do that by selling players currently on our team or doing like your strategy, Bob, and sinking the pick to start acquiring that future draft capital. But if we have an orphan that only has 2 real starters and it's Russ and Saquon, then we definitely have like a 2-year rebuild probably coming out of here. So let's go get that 25 draft capital.
Yeah, love this a lot. And the last thing I'll touch on with this is with moving Russ and Saquon, both unsexy names to move right now, you might have to kind of hold Saquon until he finds a new team in free agency. He's expected to leave New York this year. I hope it happens because I like Saquon a lot as a talent. I still think he has a lot in the tank. I hope he finds a good situation, but you might have to wait on him. I think the best strategy for him would be to target a 25 first and maybe a late second this year.
Yeah.
That would probably be my ideal pick situation, let's call it that. And with Russ, another concept that we talk about, when you can't sell less than sexy assets at their peak costs, chase quantity in the return that matches the quality that you ultimately want. So you should hopefully be able to get a first for Russ. Being a quarterback, he's still kicking around the league. He's going to be around the league for, we believe, at least a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think so.
Should be able to get a future first or a late first this year. But if you can't, chase an early second this year, a second next year, something along those lines to kind of, like I said, match that value with the quality via quantity. Anything else to add before we get to another super chat before we wrap up this draft, Nate?
Nope, but go ahead.
Let's get to this one. All right, 12-team Superflex start 9 got Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett at quarterback. Running backs, we have Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker, Austin Eckler, and then at wide receiver we have Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. I'm having trouble reading these without the first name to him. I'm not gonna lie because I have to think about him. Jaden Reed, Christian Kirk, Hollywood Brown, and then we have Andrews at tight end, and we have the 103. What are we thinking to do with this roster in a super flex? I think I would really like to secure a quarterback too with this team. If we're just talking what to do with the pick in general, I'd like to get because I don't trust Pickett to be a starter next year. I barely trust Watson to stay on the field at this point. Some say he's a value. Don't sell the guy. I'm fine with that. But you need another option at quarterback. So I think quarterback is a pretty quote unquote obvious choice. But for what that's worth.
See, Bob, what I would want to go look into is what can I do with the 103, and maybe I can add Pickett on top of that to someone who might, want to kick around Pickett. What can I do to go get a quarterback with my 103?
Sure.
Can I go get a Justin Herbert, a Jalen Hurts, an Anthony Richardson, a Jordan Love plus?
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I think I should go to get Jordan Love plus with 103, even though, I mean, I would take Jordan Love straight up over Drake May or Jaden Daniels just because we already he's what I probably would want Drake May to be. So,
right.
What can I do with this 103 to go get a quarterback, not through drafting a quarterback? Because you look at this team is ready to compete. This team is competitive right now. drafting a rookie quarterback is not necessarily the best move
Sure.
for this team if they want to be competitive. It's going out there and finding one of those quarterbacks that's already productive, already in the prime of their career, adding them to the team. And maybe you can't go get one of those top 5, top 6 quarterbacks with the 103. Maybe there's, the teams are stingy. They don't want to move off. Well, then that's when you go after the Jordan Love or the Dak Prescott or the Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray plus and see what you can get on top of that, which really, I think when you think about it, Drake May or Jaden Daniels, all those other guys, if I can get anything on top of them, I love that kind of deal.
Yeah, I think that's a good pivot or a good way to move off the pick, or and that's why we harp on all offseason, and we'll continue to harp on all offseason, is the ability or adding it to your toolkit, the option of not just drafting with a pick, but also having the option of trading back, trading out, getting creative with how you're using your picks to fulfill needs that make sense for your team. Because there's always the best player available narrative out there, which I agree with. Draft best player available if you're going to draft somebody. But at the end of the day, we do want to fill needs on a roster. And if we can do it in one shot, as opposed to, well, I'm going to draft this player to try to trade them later, there's no guarantee that somebody's going to want that player that you drafted later. But I can promise you they want that pick right now. That's just something to think about more often than not. So with that said, let's wrap up this draft. And let me find the right screen for it. That was not the right thing to do, nor was that. There we go. So I went Jacob Cowing after getting brutally sniped by Caleb at the 3-3. Braylon Allen going off the board. The disrespect. I also blame Chris, who was shouting out in the comments that Braylon Allen was not drafted yet. So, Chris, I'm watching you out there. Just keep that in mind. I went Jacob Cowing. This year's Josh Downs to me, somebody I just love as a slot player. A little smaller build, obviously, but crisp route runner, good hands, great after the catch. We see Will Shipley, receiving running back. One of your favorites, Marshawn Lloyd. Yeah. I like him a good bit too. Love the value here. Love the placement here. Jalen McMillan coming off the board at 3-7. He also has a very smooth name, Jalen McMillan. I don't know.
Rolls off the tongue.
Exactly. It just rolls right on through. Audric Estime off the board, which is a fancy name. Cade Stover at the 3-9. No Ben. Oh, no, we did have Ben Sinnott. I was just going to say at the top of the round, which is awesome. Jermaine Burton, that's a guy I want to hear from you on real quick before we get out of here. How do you feel about him now? I know you were kind of in on him coming into last year when we were doing rookie mock drafts in like 2022, and he stayed back a year because he was terrible for that year. How do you feel about him now as things change? Or what do you think about him now?
The Alabama wide receiver room, there was every opportunity for someone to go in there and take over, and no one stepped up. And it's been 2 years now for Jermaine Burton where he has not stepped up to fill that role, not to the level that he should have. Now, when you watch the tape, I still think there's traits there that I like, but he's a day 3 wide receiver with good hands that just I need to see more consistency from. Now, we've seen day 3 wide receivers like take off in the NFL. It's not like you can't be a good wide receiver just because you're day 3. But Jermaine Burton, there's a lot of consistency issues for me. Like he'd have a game where he had 200 yards, and then the next game he'd have like 40 and barely be even on the stat sheet. So, Jermaine Burton, he's got some things I like. Like I said, I like his hands. He's got good hands, decent route running, but just overall, just not to the level of wide receiver I want. So not someone I'm looking at in the 3rd round yet. Maybe like a 4th, 5th rounder for me right now.
Fair enough. And then wrap up your draft. You went Ray Davis, guy we also like a good bit. I think you like more than I do, but go ahead.
I love Ray Davis. He's going to be the Senior Bowl. So that's going to be really exciting. I want to see, if he can continue to look as good as he did on film against those guys. Get to see his athleticism a bit because that's one of the question marks I have for him. As good as he is as an all-around running back, does he have, the explosiveness and burst to win at the next level? We're going to see about that. I think he certainly can do just fine, but is he going to be that X factor? That's going to be a big question for me. But other than that, I think he's one of the best values in the 3rd round at the running back position. I really like Ray Davis.
Yeah, you and me both. And then we wrap up with Frank Gore Jr., not somebody I've watched. I believe he's a bit undersized.
I think so.
Like weight size and shorter size as well. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for as we roll on through the draft. Appreciate everybody jumping in on this draft. We're going to get to another one. I'm going to go get the board set up. I'm going to throw up
5'8", 195. 5'8", 195.
There you go. So bigger than I thought he was, actually. I thought he was a little smaller than that, but that's okay. Real quick question, because we love JSN. Any and all JSN questions might be answered. Have a person strongly pursuing him and want to know if I am to let him go, what price range should I expect? I don't think you're going to get what you should for JSN right now. I think he's a screaming buy more than he's anywhere near a sell. Nate, you go discuss that. I'm going to get this next board set up. Go ahead.
Bob, we were just talking not that long ago, actually. You text me about a question with JSN. You said 109 or JSN, Superflex League. And I said JSN. At the 109, we're looking at Brian Thomas. We're looking at Keon Coleman, apparently. We're looking at
Troy Franklin.
Jesus. I'll take JSN. I'll take JSN over all of those guys, especially here in the league where he showed flashes of, really strong talent. The overall production wasn't there, but you watch the Seahawks games and some of the catches that he made were really impressive. He's behind two really, really good wide receivers in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. We'll see if Tyler Lockett is going after this year. I believe he has a pretty large cap hit, and he would probably be really good on another team. I actually say that Tyler Lockett's kind of a buy right now because everyone is so off Tyler Lockett, just assuming that he's going to just fade into dust after this year. When we just saw Adam Thielen, who, I wouldn't even say is even close at this point to Tyler Lockett. Adam Thielen's more washed than Tyler Lockett, and Adam Thielen did really well this year. So I think Tyler Lockett going to some team in the free agent, he's going to be just fine. Anyway, JSN. I want JSN. Even if he's the wide receiver 3 next year, I still think he's a great dynasty buy. I still think he'll be a top 36 wide receiver. JSN is one of our favorite players in last year's draft and a player that I don't think anything this year really showed me that he's not who we thought he was.
Right. Yeah, it's tough when you're playing behind two studs already. And that's one thing that no other receiver had throughout the entirety of the season, that they were playing behind two studs. Like, these guys, however you want to look at them in dynasty, in overall scoring, whatever the case is, these guys are good, competent NFL wide receivers. Nobody else had this level of wide receivers that they were going up against. So with that said, I think if I'm in Superflex, I think I need 107-ish range. I need to be in that top 7 because otherwise I feel like I'm re-rolling at best, and I'm probably re-rolling short, in all honesty. I think it'll be a tough pill to swallow for that other team. But I think if maybe you send, maybe you get a second back on top and you send a third, some kind of pick flip to ease out the value. But that would be my last 2 cents. A 1 quarterback mock. Maybe, Ryan, we will get a 1 quarterback mock in here, but we are going to get another Superflex mock underway here first. And with that said, we got some mock slots to fill. Patrons, get on in there. I know it's early for some of y'all, but I'm gonna be dropping it in the YouTube comments again. That worked well for us last time. So
Bob,
I'm gonna go ahead.
Take a moment in between drafts while we got everyone here, got all the eyeballs. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please just click that little subscribe. It's absolutely free. Does not cost you anything. Just helps us out. Just lets YouTube know that you love us and that we love you. So just if you can just like the video, hit subscribe. If you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, go ahead and like it there as well. We appreciate that. Yeah,
and leave a like. Leaving likes, comments. We always try to get to as many comments as we can. We can't get to all of them because there are a lot. But, comments on the video, we're trying out some new things this off season in terms of like the editing, and I do all the editing. So I'd love to, hear feedback. We've done some things this past week alone where we've kind of changed up our, display format. So drop comments on that, whether you like it, love it, hate it. Be nice, please, though. And we're, always willing to have a conversation if we agree or disagree, especially on prospects. That's one thing that we're always open to talk on because, at the end of the day, we're just sharing our opinions, concerns, and, players we like, not hate, but you get it. So definitely, like you said, if you have not subscribed, don't make me get the subscribe counter up here again like I did last time when we were at the 10K mock and I was calling everybody out for not subscribing but still watching. Definitely leave that like, drop a question if you haven't. We might get to them. I have the comment screen up here. I'm trying to monitor that and the draft as well. How do I join the draft? One way, I just dropped the link in the comments. I hope that works. It seems like we've filled up very quickly now. But patrons will be getting first dibs. And right now you can get a 7-day free trial. Go to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. All you need to do is be in the Discord. We drop them in the Discord, and there's been community mocks going on like crazy. Ever since the rookies got in, it's been tough keeping people out of mocks at this point. We had some mocks going on at the same time before, but so we do have another super chat. Appreciate your JLow. 12 teams, start 11.5 PPR. Good at quarterback with Josh Allen and CJ Stroud. Trying to move Tua and picks for Amon-Ra St. Brown or AJ Brown. I own the 112, 202, 203, 211, and 325 first. We have a nice team build going on here. That is for sure. Nate, what are your thoughts here on how to get off of Tua to Amon-Ra St. Brown? I would prefer Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know
absolutely agree.
I think AJ Brown might be a bit of a value right now. But at the end of the day, I think go ahead, dive on into this. I just want to let the group we're knowing that we're going to draft soon.
Yeah. So, with Tua, if we're moving him for Amon-Ra or AJ Brown, I don't hate Tua in the 112, but I feel like it's a little rich just because Tua is a starting quarterback in Superflex. And while we do have question marks about Tua, he's probably going to get paid this year. If it's not by the Dolphins, certainly by somebody. He's certainly a above average quarterback at the next level. So I don't want to just move off Tua for cheap. While I may not believe in Tua as one of my favorite quarterbacks for fantasy moving forward, I do still think there's a lot of value in production with Tua. So I'm not willing to move off him super cheap. I think Tua in the 112, if I'm getting Amon-Ra and maybe a late second back or a 25 second, I think I might be comfortable with that. Otherwise, if I can put one of those early seconds with Tua, I would make that trade in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think that's the move you got to make, somewhere in that range of Tua plus to get to Amon-Ra. And I think using one of those early seconds probably gets you there, or should. Tua is one of those somewhat unappealing sells right now as well. And that's why I think you might be able to get AJ Brown, almost in a straight up swap. Maybe get a pick flip in there or something along those lines. But like I said, I prefer Amon-Ra St. Brown, a little younger, already elite. No need to get cute with buying low, I think. And it's not that much to give up, especially when you already have so much draft capital kicking around. When we, the whole, I want to put up this screen so I can be more dramatic, but then we'll get to the mock after I finish this point. But the whole concept of our rebuilds is stretching things out like an accordion and then consolidating again and getting back to elite assets through the draft, through smart trading out processes, whatever the case is. That's how we aim to do it. You're on step 2, you stretched out and you have some talent. Now it's time to consolidate a little bit to get better talent on the board. Moving Tua plus an early second doesn't hurt you that much, in my opinion. So
and Bob, you're talking about how AJ Brown right now might be a buy. I had to pull up this.
Boom, there you go.
109 and the 111 for AJ Brown. Is that a good trade? Yes, that is absolutely a good trade. You got a stud wide receiver for 2 late firsts. Cleaning up right here.
Bob spitting. I try, man. I'm always trying. But with that said, let's start this mock draft. I got it going here. I'm at the 101, and I still believe that, I get people wanting to draft Marvin Harrison at 101. But come on. It's quarterback. 101, super flex. This is a top 10 quarterback from day one. Top 10 quarterbacks are more valuable than, in my opinion, when we go to startup drafts. And that's a lot of times at the end of the day, when I look at things and I think, where is Caleb Williams going to go in startups versus Marvin Harrison? Marvin Harrison's a second round pick in startups. That, or you're drafting him over Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, which I think is foolish. Mm-hmm. Caleb Williams, I've already seen him go in the first round of Superflex startup drafts. That alone, you're taking the higher valued player at a more coveted position. I love wide receivers, don't get me wrong. I don't want to miss out on Marv either, but that's the thing. That's my 2 cents. I had to get that out there. I was feeling some type of way. I don't necessarily fault anybody, but I think in a nutshell at 101, that's where I'm going. We all tried to get cute last year and draft Bijan at 101. And I still like Bijan. I still think he's a superior talent, but granted, I don't know if I would have ever put CJ Stroud 101, even though he was my favorite quarterback. But again, you're adjusting on values a little bit there. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things. I can't do it. So we see Marvin Harrison Jr. come off at the 1-2. We have Jaden Daniels at the 1-3. And then we have a pick coming off of the 104 that is ticking down. And we have one of our patrons chiming in here, Blake. We have mocks all day, and he's not wrong.
All day, every day.
it's tough to keep these guys out of draft rooms right now. They're, I don't want to compare them to any, bad habit folks or nothing, but it's interesting. But then we see Drake May come off the board at 1-4. We have Malik Neighbors come at 105, and you were on the board at 106. You're in a nice spot here. You have two choices. Where are you going? You have to pick between two positions.
I know. This is like my favorite spot to be in mocks right now, because I kind of let the value fall to me, and it usually ends up being these two players right here at 6 and 7, just about every single time. And I get why, but we're in the middle of the first round, and usually we're seeing a talent drop off here. But like we've been talking about, this tier extends into at least the 107, and this, I think, it actually could go farther depending on the quarterback situation outside of the top three. If Bo Nix, McCarthy, or Michael Penix Jr., if any of them get that first round draft capital, we might see this tier extend into the 108, the 109 even. But at the 106, I'm very happy to be able to have my choice of these two players. And while I've been picking Rome Odunze a lot here recently, Bob, I'm actually going to go Brock Bowers here.
Ooh, spicy.
Oh my God, I had the music on. That was so loud.
I didn't hear it on my end, for what it's worth.
It was in my headphones, and woo. All right. Woke me up a little bit. Brock Bowers, though, we've been talking about him as such a great offensive player. That's what I'll say, offensive player for Georgia, because he's not just a tight end. He was that offense for a national championship, two-time national championship team, starting as a true freshman. What he's done as a tight end in college football has just been historical, literally historical, something we don't ever see. And he's fallen right now in mock drafts, like NFL mock drafts. He's starting to fall into between pick 10 and pick 15, when a month ago he was somewhere around 5 or 6 going to the Chargers. Now they got Rome Odunze or Neighbors going there usually, but Brock Bowers being a top 15 pick as a floor, he's got a ton of talent.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love Brock Bowers, and you touched on it, the historic tight end production. We if tight ends hit 600 yards in a season in college, that's
really impressive, honestly. 600 yards.
And Brock Bowers has hit 800 in 2 of his 3 seasons and 700 in the last one where he missed time. Not enough can be said.
Surgery and came back.
He had surgery and came back. It was expected to be done for the year. We were all kind of like, oh no, we were worried that he was going to miss even draft cycle prep, combine and stuff like that. At first,
3 games.
He's like, nah, I'm good. Put a screw in me and I'm good. But I love the pick, and we see the top 7 staying strong, rounding out with Brock Bowers and Odunze. Yep. Then we have Brian Thomas coming off the board, and JJ McCarthy, and our boy Jonathan Brooks coming off the board. I want to answer this question before we touch on Jonathan Brooks. David Cook, how do we join the Discord? Check out patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. You can start out with a free 7-day trial. Get in there, see if you like it. Go from there. You can get on mocks today if you want with our other Discord members. So, and for 7 days, and if you don't like it, no harm, no foul. That's what the 7-day free trial is there for. So that is the one way to do it. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind.
Link in the description.
Yep, link is in the description. I'm ahead of the game. So with that said, let's talk about Jonathan Brooks getting into the first round of this draft. I love to see it, and I think over time, we've discussed this as well, that we believe that running backs will find their way into the tail end of the first, because there's good wide receivers, don't get me wrong, but we know, especially if teams are competitive picks, a lot of teams are probably hurting more at running back than they are wide receiver, because of just how the landscape is. It's hard to find good running backs. And if you're a good team that maybe didn't win last year or did win, and now you're looking at aging running backs, whatever the case is, running backs look mighty fine. And Jonathan Brooks getting in here at the 110 despite an injury, love to see it. We are kind of concerned with year 1 production, obviously, with ACLs and running backs. They're oil and water. They don't mix very well together. So we are expecting a slow start to his career, which could create a buy value down the road too, which would be even awesomer.
That's my biggest question with Jonathan Brooks is, do I buy him now in the draft,
right, or later when he's devalued because of injury?
Buy him later when he's hasn't been on the field for a little bit, so he's just not worth as much as he was. Yeah. But the thing is, at that point, hey, I've spent a late first on this guy already. I'm not going to give him away for anything less than a late first. So, it's just something to kind of chew on.
Yeah, no, I missed on this guy last time, and I almost timed out again on the draft board. I need to pay attention to this. I need to turn on notifications for this thing.
Have the music on.
I need to, but so I took a Bucky Irving here before Braylon Allen. Love the respect on Braylon Allen. Devin, we'll get to that in a minute. But Bucky Irving, probably one of the best pure receivers in this class at running back. A lot of receiving production. We love to see that. And I think he's good as a runner too. One of my favorite things about him, and anytime I talk about just his rushing prowess, I think he's a tough runner. I don't think he's the strongest runner. I don't think he's going to bowl linebackers over with ease, but he can truck safeties and corners just fine. He can work outside, he can work inside, and he finds room where there isn't any. So that's just a few things I love about Bucky Irving, and I've been in on Bucky for a while. I was a Oregon Ducks bandwagoner this year. I'm going to be excited to choose my next college team this coming season.
You don't want to be a Dylan Gabriel fan this year?
I don't know. I'm not ruling out the Ducks.
Your boy Tez is there.
I know. I'm not ruling out the Duckies. I'm not ruling out my Duckies yet. So they're in the college landscape. So I might have a new team. I might not.
The Oregon Phil Knights.
Hey, if you want me to be a fan of your team this season, email the show dynastyrewind@gmail. Give me your
put in the subject line
thesis,
Bob fandom.
Bob fandom for college, and give me your 10-page thesis on why I should be a fan of your college team this year. And best one wins. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of applicants. So
like Purdue,
I could be a fan of a really bad team. Go Purdue. All right. So with all that fun in the books, Braylon Allen coming off of the 2-2. Love the respect here. A guy who has just tanked in, didn't even have that bad of a year, in all honesty. When you look at raw numbers, sure, he didn't have 2,000 yards, but didn't have that bad of a year when you look at his efficiencies, especially he did get involved in the passing game. Obviously wasn't efficient in that regard, and we kind of have concerns with his overall receiving efficiencies, but he can catch the ball just fine. He's not a liability. He can pass block. He's a big dude. When he can pick up his assignments, he's going to stop people, and he's still really young. Just turned 20 years old in late January, just last week. So happy belated birthday, Braylon Allen. If you're watching, you went 2-2 in this draft. We see Adonai Mitchell, one of your favorites, come off the board. Xavier Worthy got those 2 picks twisted. That's okay. I won't judge. Malachi Corley coming off at the 2-5 Gonzo. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. Drop me just a recent Discord joiner, so I want to hear about your thoughts on that, Gonzo, in the Discord for sure. Nate, go ahead at your next pick. Bob is too Wisconsin German for me. You leave my family lineage alone.
Wait, say talent again.
What's that?
Say talent again.
Talent?
Yeah, you said it better the time before.
Okay.
You have a fun way of saying talent. I like.
I'll try to work it in when we listen to it for next time, maybe. But
oh man,
Blake chiming in here too. Honestly, the most active Discord you'll find. You won't be disappointed. Shout out you, Blake. Appreciate the heck out of you for saying those very kind words. Not necessary, but often appreciated. Nate, what do you got?
Oh, I'm gonna blow your mind right here, Bob.
Are you? Okay. Oddly enough, Tom just chimed in. Member, appreciate you again, Tom. Look what I did to Keon's draft capital. I did this for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Because this is a prime example. We don't hate players, we hate values.
Yeah, there you
Keon
go.
Coleman in the mid-second, I am more than happy to take. I'm not going to avoid Keon Coleman at this point. He's got a ton of talent. I do have him graded out as an early second-round wide receiver, NFL draft-wise. The contested catchability is there. It's just the consistency of it. He's got that basketball background, so he plays well above the rim. He's got great body control. I like what we've seen out of Keon Coleman, but he was a two-sport athlete coming into college, playing basketball and football. Didn't play a ton of basketball. Was at Michigan State, transferred to Florida State. He's still a raw wide receiver. So with the development I think it's going to take for Keon to actually hit, I think it's going to take some time. I just can't spend the first-round pick on him. I have too many questions about him to put that kind of investment into him. But a mid-second, with the upside that he gives us with his size, 6'4", 215 pounds, his contested catchability that we have seen at times, I'm more than happy to take a chance on that.
Blake chiming in, emailing me about Nebraska. This is going to be rough. It's going to be a rough year. Here we go. Sick cams popping off here. Remember me when all these wide receivers bust and running backs make a return next year. Hey, I mean, running backs supposed to be really good next year, really powerful class. Yeah. I remember when this one was, So we'll see how that pans out. Benson 104, a guy we are also consensusly lower on.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll get to talk about him here.
Bob says talent.
Talent, yeah. News to me. Oh, you just put that up. My bad. Talent. I'll keep that in mind, and I'll see. I also say Chipotle. So that's also how we pronounce
Zach
it here
probably
in
hates
Wisconsin. Yeah. Oh, he does. But either way, I don't hear these things. But Tom has a quick question. Nate, who's worse, Keon or Matt Canada?
Absolutely,
I think
Matt
it's
Canada.
pretty. Yeah, it's a pretty easy one for me.
Absolutely.
But I'm surprised you left. And I hope nobody gets any ideas here. But I'm surprised you left Devontae Walker on the board. In all honesty, over Keon. Any reason for that specifically, or did you just want to make a talking point?
I wanted to make a talking point about Keon because you got to pick him up in the mid-second. I think at that point.
I agree.
I think the value is there, and I wanted to point out, like I said, we don't hate players, just hate values.
Mm-hmm. I 100%
because we had him in the first, just about a whole round ahead. I mean, I picked him up to 206. He went up
was
to
at the
108. So, almost a full round difference. That changes, how I feel about picking him.
Yes. I get to pick up a wide receiver I really like, Jalen Polk. I love that Jacob Cowing would still be on the board here as well, but I love picking up Polk here. One of the best, I think, might be the best hands in the class, because I've seen a handful of spectacular catches this season, and spectacular catch grade in Madden would be 99 if that was a thing for these college prospects. But the way he just goes up, gets it, and just brings it into his body, calls it a day. You throw it up to him, you're not sweating like you are with a lot of other guys. And I think he's a good, polished enough route runner with a versatile enough skill tree. I'm curious to see, because the thing is, and this is just getting back to kind of reality, and maybe it's just Washington just had 3 really good wide receivers. That's a possibility, that end up all being relevant, that come out in the same season. All very possible, but realistically speaking, it just doesn't happen very often. Usually, classes get sorted out. There was a time where when it was DK Metcalf and AJ Brown, and I think it was Kadarrell Hodge was the other one, or it was some other
something like that. Yeah.
Nobody now, but somebody who was being touted as, oh, this is a great threesome of wide receivers. But
Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Terrace Marshall Jr.
See, there you go. There's your 3-man band of one being carried by the other 2. And then I do, kind of have the question here too. Did Penix make his wide receivers, or did wide receivers make Penix? These are the questions.
That is the question. And
same question could be asked with Bo Nix too.
What worries me, Bob, is with the difference between the two is Bo Nix, when he's throwing to wide receivers, they're open.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say that's the offense. You can say it's a lot of different things. But when Michael Penix Jr. is throwing to guys, a lot of times it's contested catches. And you see that because, hey, Rome Odunze had some of the best contested catch ability in the entire college landscape, as well as Polk. Both of them were all you hear is their ability to win contested catches. And that just worries me. It worries me that Penix threw into so many contested catch situations and had to. You could say it's a little bit maybe his wide receivers lack the ability to separate. Maybe, there's a bunch of question marks, and I'm not saying that Michael Penix Jr. is going to be a bust or anything. I don't think that. I think he's very talented, and he does throw some dots. I saw that comment pop up. Some of those throws are really, really nice, but I just do have those questions with Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Nate, you're up, just to make sure you don't miss the pick. You got
I
sniped on Jacob Cowing. That's a shame.
He was in my queue.
But you got another favorite here too that I'm sure you're excited to draft.
Yeah,
so
you know exactly who I'm going to draft here. I'm going to get my guy Marshawn Lloyd, who I'm so excited to pick up in the 3rd round. I think, I'm a guy who loves value, and I just keep picking up value. I think Marshawn Lloyd, he reminds me a little bit of DeAndre Swift, actually, with his explosiveness, his receiving ability, and his size. So picking up someone that reminds me of DeAndre Swift and that ability, I think Marshawn Lloyd's going to be like the 1B. In a committee, but with his ability not just receiving ability, not just catch passes and make things happen, but also run and create explosive plays that way. I like that versatility. There's a lot of running backs in this draft class who are role players, specifically fit into one role. I think Marshawn Lloyd's one of the few guys in this draft class that can kind of do both.
Yeah, I don't hate that thought process either. I like Marshawn Lloyd a good bit. I think, you touched on it I think he's a solid runner, and I think he has receiving upside because he is a very competent wide receiver, and he creates for himself. And when you get those 3 kind of in tandem, and we do expect him to probably be a day 3 pick. He's somebody that can quickly find a role in an offense, in my opinion. It might not be a year one, might not be week one, but this guy can find work. So if there's a ambiguous backfield that he happens to land in, very excited to take a look at Marshawn Lloyd a little deeper, especially in drafts. And at this point, you're getting great running back value. There's only a handful of running backs that are going to be drafted in drafts this year, especially in the first 3 rounds. It's a great pickup.
Yep.
So let's catch up on the board a little bit. So we saw Jamari Thrash at 3-2 after my Polk pick, Trey Benson, Xavier Legette, Jacob Cowing, Marshawn Lloyd, Audric Estime, and Nia Smith. Brendan Rice making another appearance. Cade Stover, not Ben Sinnott, but that's okay. Dylan Lobby.
Dylan.
And do you have thoughts?
Out of New Hampshire.
Out of New Hampshire. Okay.
New
Any
Hampshire.
Thoughts?
I haven't got to watch him yet, but from what I've heard from other scouts who I trust and respect, I've heard that he's quite the receiver. Got that receiving ability, and he did come out early, which is really kind of crazy. I never thought that someone from New Hampshire would come out early, but he did. So with that, I'm kind of expecting him to actually be a day 3 pick, which means I need to watch him very soon.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, and because the thing with these guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, they go to the draft committee. They can go to the draft committee and be like, "Hey, what's happening to me?" And if they're like, and if the results come back good or better than they were expected, they come out. You know,
I mean, hey, if you're running back in New Hampshire and the draft board tells you, "Hey, well, you'll probably get drafted like in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round," you're like, "That's my opportunity, man."
Yeah, no.
You're like, "Hey, Travion Henderson went back to school. It's my time."
This class is wide open for
Dylan.
I love it, but love the point there. And just a reminder, we have a lot of comments popping in. Super chats will always be prioritizing guaranteed responses. Just can't get to all of them, and that's just kind of how it is. We are going to start filling up another draft, but we had this question pop up again, and maybe we can kind of recap our previous response if I can find it again. I screwed up here. Oh, here we go. And let's go to the big screen. I'll get the other draft board ready. Still pissed about taking Sky Moore at the end of the first round a couple years back. I know a lot of people are. Are there any busts that you all foresee? We touched on Keon Coleman. We touched on Xavier Legette. Are there any others while I get this next draft board up?
Yeah, and once again, I want to bring up, if you had taken Sky Moore mid-second, something like that, it would still feel kind of crappy because you picked a player that really didn't end up doing much, but it wouldn't feel nearly as bad as if picking him up at the end of the first. I think that value creation that we put on these players when we draft them, that's what we need to be careful about. That's what you need to keep in mind. That's why I drafted Keon Coleman in the middle of the second, because if Keon Coleman busts, I spent a mid-second on him. I'm not as upset as if I spent a mid-first on him. So, looking at these players that maybe are overvalued, maybe that's the way to put it, overvalued based on their perceived success chance in the NFL. Look at that. That should be like a stat, perceived success chance in the NFL. But taking a look at that, I'm a little worried about Blake Corum. I think he's got great vision and he's a good processor behind the line of scrimmage, but we saw a huge drop-off in explosiveness coming back from the injury from last year. This year, he was bottom percentile, really, like bottom 10 percentile for all the explosiveness stats and elusiveness stats. Mm-hmm. And, the first couple of years of his career, he did not have that problem. He was a great running back, but he just does not look the same. Looks like at this point, I feel like he was really just a product of the offensive line, and his vision working with that offensive line allowed him to be really, really productive. But if he goes to a team where they don't have a really strong offensive line to lean on, I think his lack of ability to create yards for himself is going to be a struggle. So if he goes somewhere where they have a strong offensive line, I think he can fit. I don't know if we use system running back very often as a term, but I think Blake Corum is a system running back. So if you put him with a strong offensive line, I think he could do wonders. But if you make him have to create his own yards, I think he's going to struggle.
Yeah, I do have some similar concerns with Corum. I do tend to lean that it's possible that injury really messed him up and that he'll bounce back.
First year back,
so it could have been a really bad, injury because we don't know the severity, and that's the tough part is we don't get to know the severity of the injury. I'm still interested. If I get him late second, third round, I'm pretty happy because I like Corum. I'm the highest on all of us at this point on Blake Corum. Still have a day 2 grade on him. Still like him as a player. And I think, when everybody gets quote unquote mad at us for not drafting players, it's easy to get kind of lost in the shuffle of this draft class, especially if you're a running back, because there's a lot of wide receivers that people are excited about and hyping up constantly. But when it comes to the running back room, not a lot going on.
No, there's just a lot of guys, and it's the Senior Bowl, the Combine, and then eventually the NFL draft are really going to sort out this running back class for us.
Yeah, but all right. Devin G chiming in with the super chat. Appreciate you, one of our patrons as well.
Thank you.
Appreciate the heck out of you. 101, 104, 105, 106 in 2 super flex leagues.
All right.
Have CJ in one, Burrow in the other. Serviceable second quarterback. Argument to take Marvin Harris Jr. Let a quarterback fall to 104. How do I get a dumpster fire of a team reviewed? Well, you know how to do that. Head on over to payhemp.com. You get a nice discount too by signing up as a patron. Nice 20% discount. So that is another one of the benefits, the perks of having the patron. You get discounts for roster reviews, and we have strategy guides over there available as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I 100% think that there's an argument to be had for pushing a quarterback to 104, because whether you end up taking that quarterback at 104, and we talked about this before, if you're at 104 and there's a quarterback on the board, there might be somebody looking that sees that as an upgrade versus what they already have. So that's just one way to think about it, that, you could manipulate the board that way.
Or if you're happy with any of the 3 quarterbacks and you're willing to just take, whichever one falls to you,
100%.
then you can take Marvin Harrison Jr. and then just pick up whichever one, as long as you're happy with all 3. Because if you're like, oh, I really want this guy, I'm just going to hope it happens.
I'm hoping Caleb falls 105 or 104. I don't want anybody else. Yes, exactly. That's risky. But I 100% think that there's a reason to take Marvin Harrison 104, because you get to fill 2 gaps that way either way. You don't know if you can do that if you take Caleb at 101, and then you might have to kick around a different, and maybe you want Neighbors instead. Think about it this way. Do you want Caleb and Neighbors possibly, or Caleb and another quarterback, or do you want Marvin Harrison and the third least quarterback? By consensus, might be quarterback you like more, though. Might be your second best rated quarterback. So it's definitely a way to think about it, way to go.
What would you do, Bob? What would you do?
What would I do in that sense?
And you can't trade down from 104.
I would take Caleb, and I'd go
Neighbors.
If he's on the board, I'd go Caleb and Neighbors for sure. That would be my pivot, because to this day, I mentioned it in one of the last drafts. Don't remember which one at this point, but I have Neighbors and Harrison very close. They're not like miles apart from me. I think Neighbors is closer to, and maybe Odunze, but definitely Neighbors is closer to Marvin Harrison than he is the rest of the class. And, Odunze probably has that right too, to be in that consideration. So something to think about. But with that said, this mock draft is filling up quick. We only have 1 spot left, and this is going to be a 1 quarterback. I know not everybody loves 1 quarterback league drafts, and I apologize, but we are men of the people. And geez, Bob, amateur hour, get my full screen up. People are going to know all my bookmarks.
Oh no,
I don't want that. They'll know where I get all my data from. Say washed. Does it say like I say it washed? Does it sound like that? I don't think it does. Washed. It's tough.
Okay, sometimes I say Washington, D.C. Not very often, but
Worcestershire sauce. Okay. Say that, everybody, in the comments. Mouth off, and if anybody spells it correct, I'll put your comment up on the screen. But with that said, this mock draft is full, which is exciting. And we're ready to go. We're ready to roll. This is all patrons. I apologize to all the YouTube viewers out there that wanted to get in on it, but we are going to start this thing. I got it muted. Nate, make sure yours sounds off so you don't get your ears blown out. Sounds off. Darn. Marvin Harrison went 101. Who would have thought? I will suffer and take Malik Neighbors here, who I love. Is this a Harvey Specter logo here, Tom? If it is, I love that because I'm a huge fan of suits. It kind of looks like it is. I don't know if it is or not, but either which way. I'll get this up there too real quick. Big fan of you guys. Look forward to y'all's videos every morning. Appreciate you guys, and we appreciate the heck out of you as well. That is very kind. Can't thank you enough. So appreciate the heck out of that so much. RGTY Riggedy. I don't know. I'm sure there's a better way to say that then, but we'll remember you forever for sure, because that is impressive. And thank you so much. Definitely agree, Doug. Chiming in, too early to know for sure until these kids get drafted. Where they goes matters a lot, and that's part of the things to keep in mind with this process, because we can like players as much as we want, but Mike says this a lot. The NFL is going to tell us what they think about these players, and that kind of has to put things into perspective for you. So that's just something to think about. And Tom chiming in, appreciate it. Yes, that is Harvey Specter. I love that. I love that show so much. That's one of my favorite shows. And I liked it before it was cool. Just so everybody knows,
okay.
I liked it when it was. I watched the show when it was on TV live before it, got popped off this last year for whatever reason. But with that said, we have another question. What is the schedule of your guys' live channel? We don't have one, so that is something we're working on. We are trying to live stream a little more. Because we do get enough interaction from the lives that makes it definitely worth it. It's just hard with our schedule. It's hard for us to get on, but we're working on it. It's one of the things on the
to do
to-do
more
list
live
that we
streams
have.
this off season, especially
And
like this. These mock-a-thons, we love it, and you guys love it.
This was a impromptu thing. This was not on the schedule, so that's just a sign of things to come. Hopefully, we're live a little more. I would guess we'll probably aim for mostly Saturdays or Sundays will probably be the most.
And it's probably going to try, yeah,
probably the most common before noon. And if we were to next season, we probably do, Saturday again, like during the season. I'm saying, probably Saturdays morning again, or possibly, leading up to, game day. We might do something like that. We don't consider ourselves start and sit experts. We consider ourselves guys that know how to get good players on your roster. And then, because I suck at start and sits, to be honest, like I'm not good at it. So my best players are almost always on my bench. But I can tell you, we are planning on having a Senior Bowl recap mock draft. So after the Senior Bowl, we'll have a mock draft the next day, another thing like this. So next Sunday, you can see us here doing this again. And then after the combine, Nate and I will probably jump on the next day after that. After the main offense goes, we'll pop on and we'll do another mock as well. So that was.
And then we'll live stream over draft weekend too.
We will be live streaming over draft weekend from beautiful New England this year. We were in Nottingham last year at Nate's abode, and now we'll be at Sean's. So with that said, let's catch up on this draft. Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers at the 103. And then we have that pretty clear-cut 104, I think, with Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas. Let me see our quarterbacks come off the board, and CJ Williams. Caleb Williams. Who's CJ Williams?
CJ Williams
is that a wide receiver?
Yeah, he was actually, I think, with USC for a little bit. Then he went to Wisconsin.
Yes, that's good me, I guess. Whatever. Drake May, then Troy Franklin, then Nate takes our boy Jonathan Brooks. Talk about him. Let's talk about him a little more. Let me see Devontae Walker, but talk about Jonathan Brooks. Yeah. Anything else with this draft so far?
I mean, we have this question mark of should I draft Jonathan Brooks now or should I try to trade for him later? But I think he's a first-round pick. And when you get to a first-round pick, it's hard to buy low on a first-round pick when someone just invested a first-round pick in them just a couple months earlier. So I think if you want Jonathan Brooks, you have to pick him up in the first round. Dan Brugler, just from The Athletic, put out his most recent NFL mock draft, and he went 3 rounds. And Jonathan Brooks went to the Cowboys in the second round. And Bob, if that happens, that is the dream landing spot. That is Jonathan Brooks wheels up. That is Jonathan Brooks at maybe the 105 with that kind of volume and opportunity with his talent level. I'm a big fan of the Jonathan Brooks. And with what Breece Hall did this year, now Breece Hall is an insanely athletic and very, very impressive running back. I'm not sure if Jonathan Brooks is quite to that level. But with how Breece Hall came back from his ACL injury and how each year we just keep getting better and better at the recovery of that injury specifically, doesn't have nearly the impact as it used to have. I think Jonathan Brooks, it's going to be a slow start to the season, but by the end of the season, he's going to be hit in stride. And I'm really excited about him. He's one of the few players in this running back class that I'm really excited about and feel confident about at the next level. And because of that, I'm happy picking him up the 109. Someone asked what's the earliest to take Brooks in a one quarterback. If he gets a great situation, like I said, the Cowboys in that day 2 draft capital, I would not mind picking him up at the 105, 106, because I think, while you might miss out on some production rookie year, it's a long-term play at the running back position if you can get a guy that you're going to feel really good about for 4 years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. And a question, what's a deep dart throw? The next Tank Dell. I don't know if he's Tank Dell, but he is one of my favorite dart throws. I don't know if he's deep enough, but we haven't seen him in a mock yet outside of me drafting him. Taj Washington, touched on him a little earlier. Yak God, yards after the reception per reception. There we go. Not even the right phrasing, but still it's better than what it was. Averaging over 8 yards per catch after the you get what I'm saying. You got
there.
I'm done trying it, but that'd definitely be my favorite. But Nate, do you have one outside of, you mentioned George Holani earlier?
I did. I mentioned
a running back
Luke McCaffrey as well.
Yes, I something to look at.
Other player I want to mention is Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. Okay. He's a pretty good slot receiver. And, there's always a place for those guys in the NFL. Maybe he's next Kyle Phillips. Maybe he's something more than that. We'll see.
Yeah, we will.
He's got some really good hands. There's you watch Ricky's highlight tape, and you'll see one of the most impressive catches that you've ever seen.
Oh, well, now I'm
one-handed across the middle, reaching across his body, bringing it in against contact. I mean, literally one of the best catches you'll ever see.
Gonna go put on some Florida film in a minute here. But Nate, you're on the clock. What are you looking to do at the 2-9?
The 2-9.
Interesting draft board that we're looking at here.
I feel like it's pretty open at this point. I feel like there's not too many clear picks. There's obviously my players up on the board still that I like. So, I have some guys I'm pretty happy to pick up here. I'm looking at Jacob Cowing. I'm looking at Marshawn Lloyd.
No, you're not. Jacob Cowing sucks.
Jacob Cowing sucks? What?
Yeah, it just in. You just talked about him. You just had him in Mel Kiper's most recent mock. He went undrafted. So.
Oh wow. Well then, yeah.
Scouts are off him.
I picked up a running back in the first round, so I'm going to pick up a wide receiver here in the second.
Such a punk.
The wide receiver position at this point has been pretty open. There's not, Keon Coleman went off right in front of me. I would have picked him up if he was still around. But at this point, I'm going to take a slot wide receiver that I really, really like. Bob, I know you really like him as well. He's shown that he can be used near the line of scrimmage with a low yards per catch this year, below 10, actually. I think it was like 9.7 yards per catch. While just like the year before that or 2 years before that, when he was at whatever school he was at before Arizona. I think it might have been UTEP.
UTEP.
Yep. He was averaging like 16 yards per catch. So he's shown the ability to get down the field, to be used near the line of scrimmage. He's got a lot of yak ability. He's definitely a slot receiver. He's got the red zone efficiency too that we saw over the years. He's got lots of touchdowns for a slot receiver. So he's the kind of player I think that the NFL just really likes. And he's not going to be, a first or second round pick. Hopefully he's a day 2 pick. I do think he should be a third rounder, but he's gonna be a really solid player. And I'm happy picking up a guy like that in the late second, because if I can get a consistent flex play out of that, pretty happy.
Yeah, I love the pick as well. Was hoping to get him at 3-2, and maybe that was a bit of a pipe dream, but that is okay. So catching up on this board a little bit, I went Bucky Irving in the second round, going way back to the top of the second. I went Bucky Irving, mentioned him before, one of my favorite running backs in this class, if not my favorite. Outside of Jonathan Brooks, obviously, we probably will all have him as our running back 1, with a big asterisk because of the obvious injury to him. Then we see the McConkey Tonk get started at the 2-3 with Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell, Jalen Polk, Tavion Sanders, Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman. You went Jacob Cowing like a meanie. And then Trey Benson comes out the board, Jalen McMillan. That is the funnest name to say in this class. Jalen McMillan is then Malachi Corley. Then we have Bo Nix, another show favorite, or at least you and I like him a lot. And then one of my favorite players in this draft, savior to the tight end depth of this class, in my opinion, Ben Sinnott at 3-2. Started off as a fullback, showed he can do a heck of a lot more than that. And the beauty of that he was a fullback is he can line up anywhere in the formation. He can line up in the backfield. And I think while some are concerned that, he was a fullback at one point, he's going to revert back to that. The production that he had, to me, doesn't say fullback. It says this guy is going to be more at the next level. Great catcher, great route runner, can find space, open, any given play. He's contested catchability is there, strong hands, solid player all around.
Yeah.
Then we have, did you want to touch on Sinnott?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'll keep catching up. All right. Michael Penix comes off at the 3-3, Audric Estime, Marshawn Lloyd, Blake Corum, a little running back run there. And then Nate, you're going to be up at 309.
I am. I want to hit on a comment here. Someone said, "Damn, one first round running back and single quarterback." I do not expect there to be one running back
Yeah,
after
I
the
agree.
draft. But until we get some more clarity on this running back situation, what NFL teams think, because at the end of the day, I can like whichever running back I like the most. Bob, you can like whichever running back you like the most. But
Mhm.
more so than any other position, we have to see what the NFL tells us, what they like at the running back position, who they like, what situations they're going to. That position is more dependent on draft capital and situation than any other one. So until we get some clarity there, we're all taking a conservative approach because we're just picking up the wide receiver value. There's a ton of talent there. So that's what we're kind of leaning into. Once we have the NFL draft, even maybe even after the Senior Bowl or by the time we get to the combine, I'm fully expecting there to be 2 or 3 running backs in the first round.
Yeah, I at worst they'll creep in at the tail end.
Yeah,
Because as we've mentioned over the course of time, people love running backs. The dynasty community can go and crap on running backs all they want and their values, but at the end of the day, there's competitive teams if they own their own picks at the back of first rounds that are going to be interested in running backs.
yeah.
It's just fact of the matter is, and I think we see it sooner rather than later. Like you said, as the Senior Bowl ticks up, what happened at the Senior Bowl last year? Tyjae Spears, who was relatively unknown, skyrocketed up boards. I'm sure it'll happen again this year. I can't think of all of the running backs that are there, but I think Ray Davis is there.
Ray Davis is
And
there.
then who
Maybe
else
pull it
is
up.
there? Blake Corum. Is he going?
So we got Cody Schrader, we got
Lloyd?
Marshawn Lloyd, Ray Davis, Jalen Wright, Kamani Vidal, Jawar
Right.
Jordan out of Louisville, Dylan Laub out of New Hampshire. So
I'm
we
telling you,
got
man.
some fun guys.
Jalen Wright is a name to keep your eyeballs on. Go check him out if you haven't. Love the player, and I'm excited to draft him at some point whenever Sleeper finishes getting rookies all imported. He's one that I'm waiting on, and so is Taj Washington. Not that I think I have to draft him in the third yet, but just guy I'd like to have the option to draft in the third and make it feel like I'm making harder decisions than I am. But yeah, and soon enough, we'll be kicking these into 4-round drafts, I believe, starting next month. We have a couple mock drafts scheduled to be third rounds yet, but it's one of those things we don't want to just throw ourselves at the draft board and draft a bunch of names. We have no idea who they are or what they're doing. So it's, it takes time to catch up on the class, and we are not full time on this channel yet. So just one of those things. Nate,
Bob,
you're up.
gonna have to pick the same guy I've been picking. It's just too much value. I gotta pick Ray Davis again. I can't pass on him at this point. I'm not sure if he's a day 2 running back. I think he's probably like a 4th rounder. If the athletics don't really check out to be elite, which I don't think they probably will be. So being a 4th, 5th round running back, but a guy that can handle volume because he can be a really good receiver. He can be a really good runner in between the tackles. He's able to be athletic enough to create explosive plays. He's got good vision to win in short yardage situations and down the goal line. He's got enough power to win at the goal line, especially. I mean, you look at a picture of Ray Davis, you don't want to tackle him. You look, his neck's like this big. So he's a strong guy. So I'm excited about Ray Davis and what he brings to the table in a compact package where he can just do a little bit of everything. So a great value at the 3rd round. I've talked about him like 3 different times today already.
Odie's ears must have been ringing because I was just talking about Jalen Wright, and I love the player. He's a guy who will probably be ahead of guys like Audric Estime, maybe ahead of Marshawn Lloyd. Can't say he'll be ahead of Blake Corum, but he'll definitely be ahead of Ray Davis for me. So he's probably a top 6 running back for me in this class at worst. And that's, early looks. We'll see how he shakes out, but I'm a big fan of here we go. You got sick cams popping off again. Dylan Johnson didn't Dylan Johnson play in the championship, or does he not exist? No mo. No, he's definitely there. He's a guy who Mike likes. I haven't dove into him a ton yet, so I don't feel super confident.
He's a tough player. I definitely like him. I don't think he's a day 2 running back at this point. But probably someone that we're going to be talking about like in the 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, and like I mentioned before with Blake Corum, it's easy enough for Blake Corum, who is, for most people, probably a consensus top 3 back in this class. Yeah. I would think in the broad spectrum. I know we're a little lower on him, but he's getting lost in the shuffle of this class up to this point. And I think that's going to kind of continue over time. This running back class is just going to, you're going to have to be lockstep with how this class develops. And the running back class is definitely one to be watching as well, for sure. Devin out here just Dynasty startup mock soon. Yeah, let's fire one up right now. That is a joke, by the way. We do not have time for that, let alone time for another mock. But Will, I don't know. I can't promise we'll do a live one, but I can promise that we will do a Dynasty startup mock at some point. Just not anytime necessarily.
And Thomas
soon.
over here asking you for your deep dive wide receiver.
Tahj Washington, Tahj Washington. There's another one out there, Malik Washington, that people are going to try to prop up, but you want the Tahj Washington for sure. He's a guy you want to get some eyeballs on and check out. Gets, like I said, just I think he's a good enough route runner. He has that short and deep ability. Works intermediate as well. I think another guy who's probably going to get lumped into because he's a smaller guy. He's going to get slapped the label of deep threat. Yeah. But you don't see deep threats with an 8 out of 10 yards and 8 yards after the catch per reception. Nailed it. Just had to be talking about it for a little bit, I guess, but had to be on a run. But love myself some Tahj Washington. Like I said, I think, where he ends up in the NFL draft is going to be the big indicator. If he, sneaks into day 3, which he could. Wide receivers are being very valued in the NFL right now. Yeah. But if he's an early day 3 pick, I'm obviously less excited because, there's some wide receiver, day 3 is always tough. It's kind of hit or miss. And I know we just had Puka come out of day 3, but must have picked up on my German Wisconsin accent and knew that I was affiliated with Emmanuel Wilson. I don't have any strong feelings on Wilson personally. I think he's an okay stash because if Dillon does leave in free agency, which in my opinion, they should let him walk, but whatever, they haven't done anything I really wanted to have them do yet, but not always. They've done pretty good, but
the Packers could be looking at a running back because Aaron Jones is getting up there in age.
Yep, they could, and they could be somebody that takes a shot. They could be somebody that takes a shot on a who's the Jonathan Brooks. They could do that. Let him sit for a year and then let him see what happens. Okay. You mouth off like that. But I literally just said he wasn't that good. So okay, I guess
pieces did pretty well.
Sign him up,
Cowboys,
trade,
I guess, so.
buy him for a first round pick, I guess. But considering my opinion was that I don't think that highly of him. Bo Melton, probably worth a stash, but my expectations are pretty low. My Packer fandom is in question more than anybody's. I hate that team more often than I don't. But Bo Melton, when it comes to Bo Melton, all these guys are worth stashes, in my opinion, because with how that room can shake out, like we've said, there was rumors last season. Christian Watson was getting talked about getting shipped off, traded away. There we go. Jesus. There's talks about that. This wide receiver room could shake out any way it can. But I don't have high hopes. I think he's still low man on the totem pole. He's going to be a fun player to have and root for, as an NFL fan, but I don't see him, popping off for being the wide receiver 1 or 2 or even 3 on that team consistently. But that is it for this mock. We're going to run through the last round real quick. So getting into the third, Bo Nix, Ben Sinnott, Michael Penix, Audric Estime, Marshawn Lloyd, Blake Corum, Jermaine Burton, Brendan Rice, another guy sneaking into drafts, Ray Davis, Will Shipley, Russell Wilson, and Cade Stover. So
pretty solid.
That is it for this mock. It's always fun mocking with everybody. The board is up there. So we're going to get out of here soon, but we want to kind of go run through this, some of the last minute comments. Tom Sebeski chiming in again. I'm sorry. I know I'm butchering that last name, but Packer fan to Packer fan, is it time for them to trade Watson? We just talked about this, and I could see it, but in all honesty, like I don't have strong opinion. Like, I don't think they should or shouldn't. I think they should explore it, see what they can get. But
if you can get a second round pick or a third round pick,
I don't think you do.
If you can get a day 2 pick, I think third with like a fifth next year,
or maybe Sobieski. I won't ever screw it up again. Tom Sobieski. Yeah, I hope that was right. But yeah, with Christian Watson, I would love to see him pop off because I think he has a ton of potential. I have similar feelings about him as a Devontae Walker in this draft. And I don't know if it's the 9 on their back or what, but I kind of feel similarly about their play styles. I think they can work well in slants and close to the line of scrimmage, but I think they're great deep threats as well. But some concerns are overall. I probably have less about Devontae Walker as a prospect because I don't have issue with his hands or any real raw ability, but just his usage. But I don't know. I don't necessarily want them to trade him. I'd like to see them get him figured out and fix his hamstrings, and one thing to think about too is Aaron Jones had, a ton of soft tissue injuries coming into the league and eventually got his health regimen corrected and was rarely hurt, soft tissue, knee injuries, whatever the case was. Plenty of stuff. I'm not saying that happens to him guaranteed, but it'd be nice to see him, make something out of what is a good player or can be. Here's the problem. He's a Vikings fan. We should have known. I'm kidding. I've talked about this in the chat or in like the Discord a lot, is that like I don't have like any animosity towards my division rivals, just for what it's worth. Like, go be a fan of your team.
Imagine.
Cool. Like,
can't imagine. Well, I hate all the teams in my division.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, it's the Bears this week. And like, somebody in my family will make a mouth off comment about it. And I'm like, cool. I get to watch Justin Fields play. Dope. Like, yeah, it's going to be annoying watching him, carve up my Joe Barry defense with his running game. But, that's any running quarterback. Tommy DeVito carved up our defense with his rushing ability. So, but either which way, but Tommy Cutlets, that was a fun time we had there with that
probably. I don't think we'll ever probably hear from him again.
Yes, but with all that said, appreciate all the love and support today. Nate, is there anything else you want to say before we get on out of here?
I just want to say thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining us. And we do want to do this more in the off season. And feel free to, let us know what you guys want to see from us, because we're always trying to make this thing better, trying to make it more what you guys want, what we can do for you guys. So give us the feedback, what you guys like, what you guys don't maybe. And then jump in the Discord, because we're having a great time over there all the time. There's always content over there. We're doing lots of mock drafts. We're just having a great time. And we'd love for you to join us.
Yes, 100%. Get in there. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in on that 7-day free trial of the Discord or the Rewinder tier. You can check out some bonus podcasts. Mike and Nate have a bonus podcast. Zach has a bonus podcast. Our buddy Noah, who will be featured on the channel more as we get through this offseason. We're trying to get him more into our rotation. Love Noah. Love Brandon over there as well. He has some insane data sheets that you get access to.
Really impressive
overall. So plenty of stuff going on over there that you can get access to. And if you need help, more in-depth help with your rosters, we can only do so much when we talk about, we get a comment on here and here's this, what can I do? When we get into these roster reviews, we go so in depth. We establish how to play in those league formats. We talk about who to keep, who to cut, who to trade. It's a funny way of saying keep, trade, cut, but either which way, talk about building around core players, how to build with the roster, how to attack your rookie drafts, and how to attack some trades. So definitely consider that. Payhip.com/Dynasty Rewind. All of the ways that you can support the brand and the channel, always in the YouTube description box. If you're ever looking for a way to support, the easiest way to support the channel, leaving a like, commenting down below what you thought of the video. Give us your insights on, if you have other opinions than ours, hey, let's have a discussion. More than happy to do so. If you are just enjoying the content or want to see us do different things, like Nate said, like, hey, can you guys do this? We get a lot of, on our Superflex mock drafts, we get a lot of comments asking if we do one quarterback. And if on our one quarterback mock drafts, we get a lot of questions asking about doing Superflex. So we got a lot of fun stuff ahead in the books. We got a lot that we're working on this offseason, and we appreciate y'all for stopping in and enjoying this Monday morning. I don't wish it was Monday morning. I do
not wish it was. Come on, Bob. I just got your weekend.
This Saturday morning, I'm trying to outro here and just butchering it, but love all you guys. Appreciate all of you for chiming in, tuning in, hanging out with us this Saturday morning. Enjoy the weekend. Go Ravens.
Yes.
And go
Lions.
49ers.
Ooh, okay. You do kind of have.
I think the Niners are going to win.
All right, Bob's finally getting.
But I like the idea of
animosity going on, so we're proud of him.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I like them both. In all honesty, I want the best team to win. And I want a good, clean game.
You know what? The Ravens played both the 49ers and the Lions this year. I think they beat them both by at least 2 touchdowns, if not 3. So I'm not too worried as long as we can get past Mahomes.
Oh.
Ooh, it's so nice to be the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, if you can get past Mahomes, I think you pretty much win the. That's basically the Super Bowl.
That
is just beating Mahomes. You win. You win it at that point. But with that said, we're gonna get on out of here. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.